In this example, we're going to go over the best way to get data out of R and into Excel. A typical use case for this is that the data set that we're working with is too large to work with in Excel. So we use R to handle all of the calculations, lookups, filters, and aggregation so that we can work with a pre-processed copy of our data, which has been shrunk down to a size which Excel is better able to handle. This chunk of code here comes from the previous lecture on pivoting. So let's quickly go through and run this code. First of all, I'm going to load Tidyverse, load up our data set, and then run this pivot. Now, to get an idea of what this pivoted data looks like, I'm just going to pipe this into View, Control Enter, and this is basically the data set that we'll be looking to export. So to do this, I'm basically going to come back and I'm going to replace the view function with write_CSV. Now, just like read.csv, we want to use the underscore version instead of the dot version. So we'll be using the version that comes with readr, which is part of Tidyverse. In here, I'm going to give this a file name, employee summarized. .csv. Hit Control Enter, and this pops out to our working directory. Now, if you don't see this here, then please go back and review the lecture on our projects and working directories. Now I'm going to come over to Excel so that we can import this data set. Now, what most people will typically do is they will just take the CSV file and just click Open. Now, the problem with this is that if you start to do any work on the data, such as adding some calculations, adding a pivot table, any of that sort of thing, if you then need to go back and refresh your data or make any changes to your R script and re-export again, you're going to lose any of those changes that you've made in Excel. So the better way to get the data into Excel is using a function called Power Query. I'm using Excel 2016. Where Power Query has been renamed to Get Data and is sitting underneath the Data tab. In Excel 2010 and Excel 2013, Power Query is a free add-in from Microsoft. Now you can go to the Microsoft site and download this add-in for free and install it. I will provide a link to this site in the lecture resources. Later on, if you want to enable this add-in, you basically come to File, Options, Add-ins. Down here, we change this option from Excel add-ins to COM add-ins and click Go. And we'll see, if you're on one of the earlier versions of Excel, you will see Power Query here once you've installed it. So to use Power Query to bring our data into Excel, I'm going to come over to this Get Data button, from File, and select From Text/CSV. Here I'm going to select the file that we exported from R, and I get this little preview. Now, if some of this data isn't coming through properly, there is an option down here to click Edit. This all looks pretty okay, so I'm going to go ahead and load this. And basically what this does is load the data into a new worksheet inside of Excel. So over here, we can see we have a query and I have my 31 rows loaded. So now let's add a quick pivot table to this data. Let's just add a sum of some of the key metrics. And let's group this by county. So here right now we can see that we only have one county available, which is what we specified in the filter in our R script. Let's say we wanted to go back and change this filter. I'm going to come back over to R, come to this filter line here. I'm going to hit Control-Shift-C, which is the shortcut for adding this hash in front. Now you can also obviously type this hash as well. But this is a handy shortcut, especially when you have lots of lines of code which you want to comment out in a single go. Now that we've commented that out, Control-Enter to rerun this data. I'm going to come back over to Excel again, and I'm basically going to hit refresh. We've now gone from 31 rows to 427 rows. If I come back over to my pivot, the data hasn't been refreshed in the pivot yet, but it has been refreshed in the source. So all we need to do is hit the refresh button on the pivot table as well. And there we have all the updated records coming through. Now, the other type of update that you might want to make to your data is adding in additional columns to it. Now, this was slightly easier in Excel 2010 and 2013 with Power Query, as you'd basically follow the exact same step I did before and hit the refresh button. With Excel 2016, we have to do one little extra step before we can make the refresh work. If I come over to my query and I come over to Edit, over here there is a button for Advanced Editor. If I click on this and scroll over, this is basically the settings for my import. There is a parameter over here called columns equals 9. So I originally imported in 9 columns of data, and Excel 2016 has added this to the specification. The problem with this is, if I add additional columns to this, it will still only import 9 columns of data. To correct for this, all I need to do is basically delete this and click Done. Now that I've made my change, I can come over and click Close and Load. I haven't made any changes to the underlying data yet, so I still have 427 rows. Let's come back over to R again. And in the group by, I'm going to add in city. Control Enter to rerun that data set. Come back over to Excel. Hit refresh again. Now I have 548 rows. Add my new column. If I come back over to my pivot table, I don't have the new city column here yet, but all I need to do is hit refresh on my pivot table, and now I have city. This has been a lecture from my course, R Reporting and Analytics for Excel Users.